Hey everybody, what's going on? I'm DJ Sixsmith. You're watching Sit Down. Nathan Kress here with us. iCarly streaming right now on Paramount Plus. What's up, man? How are you?
I'm great, man. We just got our pickup announcement for season 2, so everybody's feeling really good. Everybody's excited. We're enjoying the hiatus while it lasts, but we're really pumped to just be able to hit the ground running and get straight into making more of this show that people seem to like. So it's definitely been a relief these last few weeks as we've seen episodes roll out and see the reaction to it, and then knowing that we've got more to do is it's pretty exciting.
I mean, what a crazy journey, right? You started in '07 on Nickelodeon. Here you are with Paramount Plus. It's been one of the most popular shows on Paramount Plus. I mean, what's the most mind-boggling part of the whole experience? The beginning, just the time in between, where you're at now? What do you think?
Man, I think honestly, I think the I don't know exactly which point in the show it was, but when it kind of went to meteoric levels on the original show, where it started just becoming its own pop culture phenomenon, and words from the show were starting to get used, and it was just becoming part of pop culture. And it was really when social media was really taking off and YouTubers were kind of taking off, and we realized that we were kind of ahead of our time in '07 when we started, but we've really like sort of been part of this launching of culture that's completely changed. And then now, as you know, when before the revival started and before we started shooting, just looking back on it over the years and thinking, man, we kind of did a lot of that. Like, we had a lot to do with that happening, and like, you know, maybe kind of inspiring sort of a generation of kids to want to do what we were doing. So I think that was the craziest part, was seeing kind of a tangible influence on culture from this thing that we were doing.
It's really remarkable when you put it that way. And then the cool part is that you get to see the characters grown up, and obviously you as an actor grown up, right? Like, you're a dad in real life, you're a dad on the show. I mean, what's
Yeah.
it like just seeing the transformation of the character now on Paramount Plus?
You know, it's been really exciting to see how everyone's characters have wound up in different places, but especially how Freddie's life has just not quite gone to plan. Not many good things have happened to Freddie, which is great because it gives a great launching off point to see his lives. I think so many of the greatest shows of other eras, you know, Friends and How I Met Your Mother and all those shows, they don't start in ideal places. And that's what makes it so satisfying to see their arc as a person and as a character continue on the show. And hopefully they wind up finally in a very satisfying place, and that's very cathartic for the audience. And I think one of the coolest things about the fact that we did this show for people in their 20s and early 30s who watched the show as kids like us early on, now they're watching a show where they're kind of seeing people dealing with some of the same things that they're actually dealing with in real life. And seeing my character hopefully is kind of relational and relatable, I guess, in a way, and just, I guess, kind of shows something to aspire to. And it's cool to be able to play that character and not just have everything be hunky-dory, but show that he's not in a good spot, but he has a place to go, and there's kind of a trajectory that he can find himself on. And I think that that's hopefully satisfying for the audience, and it's a lot more satisfying as an actor to play because of the inherent range that's involved.
Yeah, there's a few more layers than Freddie back in the day in terms of just putting the shows together and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's funny. What I like about what they've done with the character is that in a lot of ways, even with all these bad things that have happened, it's made his attitude a little bit more um, stalwart, I guess. Like, he's a more consistently positive person. And I think he's become a little bit too much of a hopeless romantic. So that part has like not quite worked out for him. But in a way, some of the things that happen to him, he just sort of takes them in stride and rolls with the punches a little bit more. And as the season progresses, you'll kind of see how he takes bad things that happen and turn them into usable moments and positive things for him. So that's something that I don't think would have happened to old Freddie. And so you can kind of see how there's a change in him there as well. That has been fun to see how he's evolved in the last 9-10 years.
That's a great point. And also how those moments are turned into comedic moments, right? It's like, yeah, this is a bad thing, but we're going to laugh about it. So what's it
Right.
like just to see the writing here in 2021 where we're going to talk about serious stuff, but we're going to put a nice little spin on it and make it a little bit lighter as well.
Yeah, the writing, it's so funny. The writing on this show has made me realize how much of a boomer I think I am on the inside. There's a lot of terminology that I did not, when I read the script, I was like, what is this? What does this mean? And then when the episode comes out, it breaks the internet. So it just goes to show how like out of touch I am with the lingo, with what all the kids are saying these days. So it's been very educational for sure. I can definitely say that. And it's been fun to see both sides of it and see how different the show has become, where hopefully, you know, if we're doing it right, and so far it seems like the reaction has been this, that we're taking enough elements of the old show and kind of classic feels and vibes from what we were doing, but then couching them in how adults are now, not how kids were in 2009. And that's a hard evolution. Fortunately, we have a good span of time between the shows to be able to just say like these people are different now. They talk in different ways. They say and do different things. So we have a little bit of leeway. And I think that so far, by and large, it's definitely been people saying that they relate to what we're doing. Like even just, you know, an episode recently came out where Freddie felt like he missed out on his 20s and got drunk at a party. And the amount of people that I had reaching out to me saying, I hate how much I relate to that. Like, that's something that you would never get to do, but like our writers get to do because we're in a totally different place. So I think that in a way, hopefully the show is kind of like group therapy for people in their 20s who grew up in the internet era and we're all going through similar things, which has been, it's been fun. I feel like people have related to the show a lot more now than they did back in the day when it was a little more aspirational, that it was just kids who had this massively popular web show. Now anybody's a content creator, anybody's an influencer.
Yeah, you go on TikTok, it's a whole different story now.
Yeah, exactly. That's not that special anymore. So now it's kind of just it's just sort of us living our lives and doing stuff that relates to adults.
I think it's a great way you put it there in terms of group therapy, in terms of the relatability. I mean, your character clearly resonates, but even just watching the way that Miranda still resonates all these years later, or the way that Jerry resonates. I mean, what's most fascinating to you as you take a step back, and even when you've directed some of these episodes, right? What's been most intriguing to you when you think about all these things?
I think that has been one of the most fun things to me is right when it was evident in the first 2 weeks, mostly when we got to set, and you know, obviously like Jaden and Lacey were fantastic from the get-go. They just knew their characters and they were them and they were perfect, but they were fresh. Like they were bringing those characters to life for the first time. The thing that I was most curious about was how are Miranda and Jerry and I going to do this? Like, how are we going to do something 10 years later where we're going from a kid's show with a whole different feel to an adult show, but they're the same people. They can't be fundamentally different, but they have to be different enough. So what is that going to look like? And is that even going to work? Because that was one of the scariest things about the show, is no one had really done this before, taken a true kid show and made it a true adult show as a continuation of the same storyline, not just completely, you know, maybe taking the same characters, but completely rebooting it or twisting it around to be something else, or making it like a dark take on it. Looking at you, Powder Puff Girls. So the idea was risky in and of itself. And so getting to see that the first couple of weeks was really cool, because it just, to me at least, it felt like they just slipped right into it. And it was effortless in my opinion when I watched them do their thing. And for me personally, it was a little bit of a struggle. And I went to the writers a lot. And in the first couple of weeks, I know, like, I don't even know if I'm supposed to say this or not, I was very uncomfortable with whether I was even doing the right thing. So I was going with them a lot, like after takes, saying like, does this feel right? Does this look right? And they're always like, yes, it does. It feels exactly right, which was great, because what it made me realize was by the end of the show, the old show, I was basically just performing Freddie as if it were me. We were kind of assimilated into one sort of person. And so now the only way that I knew to be Freddie was to basically just kind of be myself as this new Freddie, because I, Nathan, have aged 9 to 10 years since then. I talk differently. I act differently. How would I do it? And this is kind of an amalgamation of what I would have guessed Freddie was from watching old episodes that I did, leading up to shooting the show, and in my own mind, what I would say and do and how I would react and the face that I would make to my mouthy 11-year-old daughter, So it's been fun being able to kind of continue to be myself like I was at the end of the first show. And that's sort of been my North Star, if you will, of sort of performing this character so many years later.
It brings up a really good conversation about identity, right? You obviously identified as Freddie for a long time. People identified you as Freddie, right? But you have been Nathan, right? You're a dad. Yeah. You have a podcast. You do all these other things. How do you think about identity, especially as you think about all the different chapters of your acting career?
Well, it's been an evolution, that's for sure. I think the biggest thing that I've learned is to not get too locked into anything that you think that you are. For a long time, even to take it as an example, I always knew I wanted to be a dad. So that part I was just sort of gearing up to all my life. And I think I just decided to mostly act like a dad starting at 14 so that I could just get that mindset kind of locked in for my whole life. And it's made things a lot easier in that way. But like, for example, one of the things that I never thought was going to be part of my identity, at least in my occupation, was being a director. Because I would watch the directors on the original iCarly and cringe at how difficult and stressful and overwhelming it all looked. I would just see them sitting there literally with a bead of sweat coming down the side of their face, with them like scratching, trying to like look around going, okay, how are we going to shoot this? We have 30 minutes. The kids are about to go, like legally, we can't have them anymore. How are we going to shoot this scene? And this thing broke and this thing's not working. And just seeing that, I was like, I'm never doing that ever. And so when the opportunity came up and I was asked to consider doing that, my first thought was, no, I'm not. Thank you. Flattering, but no, I will not do that. And then lo and behold, a couple of years after that, I got to the point where I realized I need to try it. I have to try, because I'm going to kick myself if I go through my whole life never having taken on that challenge and let that potentially be a part of something that I never would have expected. Because I didn't really want it. I wanted to just be able to say, I'm an actor. This is what I am. This is what I do. This is my passion. But then I go in and do that week of directing. And yes, it was the most stressful thing I've ever done in my life. But the feeling after and watching that get on TV and say, like, this was my baby and I crafted this from my mind, and being able to see that actually come across was groundbreaking for me, and I fell in love with it immediately. And now, going into doing this show, yes, I wanted to act on it. Obviously I wanted to be this character, but I also wanted to direct it, to be able to use that muscle and be able to put that level of creativity in it and collaborate with the actors in a completely different way and collaborate with the crew in a completely different way. So that was something that I never really thought was going to be part of my identity when I started in 2014, but now it's a massive part of it. So I think telling myself to force myself to be adaptable and take risks and do things that I'm uncomfortable with, because the potential upside of it is limitless. That's a whole other way that I could take my life if I choose to. So being able to not be so firm in what I want and what I think that I am, I think has been very valuable in these last few years.
I'll let you go. You have your podcast, Radioactive Dads. I'm going to become a dad for the first time. I got a baby girl on the way.
Yeah,
can we get some advice for me? What should I know going into this whole thing?
For what, get sleep now, because you will not. Just sleep literally as much as possible. And I think, so this is your first. So
first, yep.
I know the thing that's about to happen to you. You're going to overthink everything. Everything will be the end of the world. Everything will hurt or kill your child. And you will stress about things constantly, and you will always be in your head. After having my second child, I've learned very little of that actually matters. Very little. So I stressed out. You would have no idea how much hair either fell out or turned gray from my first daughter being born. But when the second one came around, it was just like, oh, okay. Turns out my parents were right when they said, really, buddy, you don't have to worry about this stuff. All of my friends who had multiple kids were like, just so you know, this doesn't really, you're fine. You're doing the right thing as a first-time parent, but you're overthinking it. That is actually 100% true. So in as much as you can, I get it because I wasn't able to do it as a first-time dad, but in as much as you can, let go of as much as possible and just enjoy the ride and lean into that whole the days are long but the years are short thing. Like if you have a good moment, sit in it for as long as possible and just soak that in. Sometimes it can go a little bit too fast, especially in the beginning when you don't have sleep and you don't remember what month it is.
Yeah, that's all coming from me. Well, I appreciate the advice, man. I appreciate hanging out with you. Congrats on everything, and we'll chat again down the road, all right?
Awesome. Sounds good. Thanks for having me.